Where does Ollama store the models? That's a common question in the Discord, but when folks find out, they're even more confused than ever. Just take a look at this directory. Do you know what's in here? What's this versus this? Or this? Well, the way to figure it out is by looking at the Ollama manifest. Ollama is available on two different platforms, at least today as of this recording, Linux and Mac. Windows is coming soon. Really.
You have my word on it.
Actively being worked on. So we can find all the files Ollama uses in one of two different places. On Mac, you can find it under the user root, then .ollama, and then models. On Linux, it's under user, share, Ollama, and then .ollama and models. So here you can see two different directories, blobs and manifests. Let's go into manifest. This is organized by registry, then organization, then model. For now, there's only a single registry, which can be found at ollama.ai. But at some point in the future, more options may come about. You can see when I look at the registry directory, there are a bunch of names. I usually post models to Matt W or M or even Techno Evangelist, but the official models are under library. So let's take a look at that. Llama 2 is probably the model you started with. So let's go in there. And here we have a file for each of the tags that we have pulled. So let's take a look at the 7b file. At the top, there's a schema version set to 2. You might be wondering if this is the second version of the Ollama manifest schema. It's not. It's actually a schema defined for another tool, Docker. Quickly look over this format of this manifest, then let's take a quick side trip to look at the Ollama Docker container using the Docker manifest tool. Docker manifest inspect Ollama/Ollama. Does that look familiar? Okay, back to the Ollama manifest. The media type for the file is application vnd docker distribution docker container image v1 JSON. Ollama isn't Docker, but the team has its roots in Docker, creating Kitematic, which essentially became Docker for desktop over the years, and also creating much of what we know of as Docker Hub. Everything else in this file is going to be in config, which is an object with a media type, digest, and size, or in layers, which is an array of config objects, each with a media type, digest, and size. The contents of config aren't that interesting, so let's skip ahead to the layers. And this does get interesting. I'm not sure if the order of layers matters much, but the first layer you usually see has a media type of Ollama image model. And comparing the size of this layer to the others, this is the biggest. Digest is the SHA-256 digest of the file. You can think of a SHA-256 digest as being like a fingerprint for the file. And those fingerprints are actually the file names that you can find in .ollama/models/blobs. So the model digest starts with SHA-256:8934D, and we can find that file in the blobs directory. It's a huge file, so we won't be able to open it in VS Code. So let's move on to the next layer. It has a media type of Ollama image license. The digest starts with SHA-256:8C17C2. So let's take a look at that file. And if we run Ollama show --license llama2 7b, we see the same text. As compelling and exciting as license agreements can be, let's move on to something potentially more interesting. The digest for the template starts with SHA-256:2E0493, and there we see the template. Now take a look at the manifest for Llama 2 13b model. Scroll down to the template, and it's the same template digest, which means it's using the same file in the blobs directory. Now here's a command we can use to see all the manifests that use the same template. And we can see that many of the models share the same template. There are a lot of other models that use essentially the same template, but they may be off by a space somewhere, so we'll have a different digest. So what happens when we pull a new model is that it grabs the manifest and then looks for the list of blobs it needs to download. If your machine already has any blob, it doesn't download it. Let's take a look at a few other scenarios. Let's copy a model. Ollama CP Llama 2 7b Matt W / a model for the video. Now let's take a look at the new manifest. The model digest is the same. If we create a new model file and say from Llama 2 7b with system, you are an insane model, and then Ollama create mattw/insanity, let's take a look at the manifest for mattw/insanity. It's the same model SHA-256 digest. Okay, so what happens when we delete a model? Ollama rm mattw/a model for the video, and we see that the blob is still there. Ollama rm llama 2 7b, and still the blob is still there. But Ollama rm mattw/insanity, and now that blob file is gone. So we keep the blob files for as long as there is a model file or manifest that references it. And we only keep a single copy of any blob and reuse it if another model includes it. That's why we can delete dozens of models and not get any decent space back, or why we can add hundreds and not consume more, assuming all those models are based on the same source model. Hopefully that clears up a few questions, like where do we store the models? Why don't the models have sensible names? What happens when I delete a model? And so much more. Let me know if you have any other questions, and be sure to like and subscribe to get more similar videos. Thanks so much for watching. Goodbye.